So I'm delighted to be chatting with you today, Eduard Muller in Costa Rica. We've met several times and you've always been telling me how you're using the Doughnut to regenerate Costa Rica, which just sounds like the most incredible project. So this is a fabulous moment. Thank you for making the time. I'd love to hear about what you're up to with the Doughnut in Costa Rica.
Thank you, Kate, for the opportunity. I think every time we can tell a story of what we're doing, it just gives people more of a grasp on how they can do it. I think what we're trying to do with Regenerate Costa Rica is a roadmap for regeneration at the country level. It's actually working in parallel with a roadmap for New Zealand. And the idea is to use these as examples for other countries to follow and for other people to follow. The scale is not really the relevant part. This is a national scale, but you can do a bi-regional scale, you can do a town, you can do your neighborhood, you can actually do your family. So that's the good thing about the Doughnut. It's so scalable and so visual. With one infographic, you can put everything together. We always have this reductionist approach to whatever we're doing, where economies on one side, ecologies on the other side, societies on the other side. This puts it all into one image and we can really quickly see where we are. And I'm really looking forward to being able to measure the transition to that better Doughnut. So the metrics we want to develop are exactly that. Are we making progress to a better Doughnut? And that is the key thing for the future collaboration with the Doughnut Economics Action Lab.
Brilliant. Tell us, I know you've got some slides. I would love you to tell the story just of what is the work that brought you to this place and the initiative you have going now.
Okay, I will use my slides.
Great.
Because this is what actually allows us to have a clear picture. I love images, and I think you do too.
I so do.
I actually, about a bit over 10 years ago, came to the conclusion that sustainability was not possible anymore. And especially when the planetary boundaries approach came out, that defined the safe operating space for humanity. And we got these big global changes that are all basically caused by the human being. And the lack of understanding of many people involved, for example, in climate change, of the real issues and the need to attack them or deal with them or find solutions in a holistic manner. So a lot of people still don't know that biodiversity loss will get humanity out of the safe operating space a lot sooner than climate change will. And fertilizers are under the radar, and they are together with biodiversity loss, the second biggest cause to get us out of our comfort zone. And land use change and then climate change. And everything is focused now on climate change. But I think one of the most revealing issues is that agriculture is responsible for 80% of global changes, only about 30% of climate change. So if we want to live in a better world, we need to really look at this holistically. And that is where your outside Doughnut came to be. So there was already a tremendous overlap in our approach when I started looking at your book and saying, wow, this is smart, putting all the social things in. So we knew since many decades ago that we had to cross this bridge and get in balance with nature again. And right now we're also still stuck in the middle of that bridge, and we can either move forward into a better future of abundance, of resilience, or we can walk back to our old system and then just face the consequences, which are really exponential right now. So the big issue is, are we going to be just looking at what's happening, this new normal? I don't think so. I think we have a big chance to co-create a better future. And I think that is the ability we're having now with all this cooperation all over the world. We're told all the time that we need to adapt to a changing planet. Yeah, climate change adaptation for biodiversity. I think this is a wrong attitude. I'm not saying it's not necessary, but we should focus on that we can still build the future we want. Nature has shown us how resilient it is in these 6 month vacation we have given her. And I think she's really willing to still collaborate with us. And a lot of our thinking goes back to the Three Horizons model, which is that the business as usual and whatever happens within that paradigm will not solve our current issues. If we keep on using the same tools, the same mindset, I mean, Einstein said it so many years ago, we won't make the change. So in order to go to that viable future, we really need to work on the second horizon, on those initiatives that can transition humanity to that future we want. And that's where I see donut economics and some other global initiatives that are allowing us to have the tools to move forward. So let's just not fight the system. I mean, it's too much energy going into fighting the existing system. Let's just build a better one and make it obsolete. And that Buck Fuller said many, many years ago. So the biggest issue that got me to where I'm today in regenerative development work is that I think we made a mistake with environmental education because we told people we had to take care of nature. The truth is, nature is better without us. Nature does not need us. We need nature. So unless we realize that if nature is not functioning, humanity doesn't function, humanity does not exist on this planet, that is actually the fundamental shift. We need to respect, we need to allow nature to keep on thriving and to recover from the damage we've done. So, as I said, I think nature is really trying to help us. It sent us this little present in the shape of a virus to put humanity on its knees, not to disrupt the system, but just to show us how wrong, how unresilient, how malfunctioning our system is from the political level, the economic level, the greed, the 1%, even the education that we have, this reductionist approach. We really need to have this fire drill because there could be a potential vaccine or treatment for the virus, but there is no vaccine or treatment for extinction and for hothouse climate change. So this is a good exercise. But this requires us to reinvent ourselves. We need to really resprout with new energy. I used to think of a revolution as an activist. Now I think more of an evolution. So we need to move from our normal model, the ego economy, ego society. We have man on top, the woman underneath, and the rest of life at our feet. We went through a transition. A lot of people are still going through this transition. This is an early second horizon transition where we have the eco-economy, the eco-ecology, but a lot of the frameworks that are being used there are still from the old system. I am totally convinced that, as Isha Black tells us, and we need to move to this new relationship of Seva, where humanity is in service of life, where we give more than we take. And I think that is the basic principle underlying whatever we're trying to do. So this is how Regenerate Costa Rica comes to life. It is looking at the Doughnut and at the Leeds University. Costa Rica is one of the countries that is closer to becoming the correct Doughnut. And I just could not let this opportunity go by with actually using it as the instrument to move a whole country forward. And I'm not saying we have a whole country moving forward. I'm saying it's the gateway to get people involved in building this new future. And of course, there's where you come in, Kate, and also Daniel Val, who's another brilliant thinker in regeneration. You guys have inspired me in this work I'm doing. And basically, we need to move away from the disciplinary reductionist approach to integrating these 6 dimensions. Many other people might have other dimensions. These are the ones that are important for my work. It already originated actually early 90s or mid 90s, where I had already added the political, culture, and spiritual work to sustainability. I don't think we will solve any of the issues without the spiritual component. We need that mindfulness, we need that responsibility, we need the ethics, and there the Earth Chart is very valuable for us. In environmental issues, there's lots of science. This is the best scientifically documented planetary extinction. We know all the science we need. We just have to use it to make decisions. So how do we include all of these dimensions into a holistic approach? And that is the biggest challenge. So basically for us, regenerative development is parting from the reductionist approach to a holistic approach where we know that nature has to function. All ecosystems have to function, no matter if it's an urban landscape, a protected area, an agricultural landscape. All of them have to provide ecosystem services and allow for biodiversity to thrive. Ecosystems do not function without biodiversity. So we need to benefit all of life forms, not only the human ones, but we need to measure this differently. GDP, the gross domestic problem, is not measuring development. It's not measuring our humanity going forward. So we need to use happiness and hope. And that's how we get youth involved. Let's have hope and let's build together this better future of well-being. So here's where the Doughnut comes in. And looking at the Doughnut of Costa Rica, we're not that bad. I mean, there are lots of countries with lower social threshold, with more red in that citrus in the center, with a huge footprint. So we haven't done that bad in terms of our development. But
Yeah.
still,
Can I just jump in there just at this point, because you said a moment ago, like Costa Rica is one of the countries that's almost in the donut, and I think it's just really interesting for people if they were to go to this the Good Life website, which has 150 countries, and some of them, like my country, the UK, which is massively in overshoot on planetary boundaries and falling short on social needs, and other countries like Malawi that's not overshooting any planetary boundaries but massively falling short on people's needs. And Costa Rica it's actually a country I hold up, no pressure guys, but this is a country I hold up when I show in an international presentation. I show countries that either end the spectrum, and then I say, here's a country that is quite close to meeting the needs of all people, almost within the means of the planet. And they haven't even really been trying to do that fully as an intentional goal. So this gives us hope that it could be possible. What if Costa Rica now were to start directing itself in the direction of doing that? This is a place where we feel that possibility is there. So I'm thrilled that you're leading this, and I'm thrilled that you're working with the National Doughnut that is closer than almost any other to getting into that safe and just space. Like I said, no pressure.
No, and we're actually really using this as a roadmap for regeneration for other countries to follow. I'm really proud to be a Costa Rican. About 70 years ago, a president abolished the army. And he said, what for waste all this money in military that doesn't lead to anything? And that abolishment of the army put those resources into education and health. And that has paid off. So there are many reasons for this donut not to be so wrong. But I think as Costa Ricans, we are proud that we recognize the value of our environment. Having grown up with all this biodiversity and this magic of nature, it really is part of our being. Now, the younger generations, with all this neoliberal market-based economy that has been pushed on, and right now we're about to sign a new agreement with the World Monetary Fund that makes it even more difficult to look for balance. We have seen society move away from that. And now people are wanting to bounce back to the old system and get rid of environmental regulations, not to avoid the economy bouncing back. So we really have a short span to demonstrate and co-create that world we want. So basically, what we're thinking of is dealing with limited resources to solve our biggest problems. So usually people tend to choose the most complex problems where you need a huge amount of resources, be it money, be it technical capacity. We have found out at the University for International Cooperation through 40 years of my life and 26 years of university life that we can actually solve a lot of the problems with our own people, with our own resources, not depending on external cooperation, with limited resources. And that actually empowers society to go ahead and solve more problems. So we can actually start dealing with the big problems with little resources and leave the complex problems to the end. And that's what we're doing. So we're basically just looking at the donut and say, okay, what do we have to do? First, we have to do the reduction in our planetary boundaries. And then we need to build up the social part. Now, the outside is pretty simple. We know agriculture is doing the damage. So nitrogen, phosphorus, CO2 emissions are a lot coming from agriculture and converting forests to pastures and even pastures to pineapple. Our material footprint, our ecological footprint, land use change. So land use change, we're actually already doing progress, and this has been before Regenerative Costa Rica. We went from 21% forest cover about 20 years ago to over 50% forest cover. Wow. So the country is already moving forward. Now, if you look at the social component, our biggest problem is inequality, and it has grown. I grew up in a middle-class country. Now we have poor and we have rich, and the middle class is small. So in order to reverse this, we need to push local development. We need to tie producers and consumers together. We need to move away from the import model where we're bringing in cheap tilapia through these big corporations from Vietnam or China, produced in filthy water, lots of heavy metals, and at a price that our farmers here cannot compete with. So it sounds like protectionist, but actually we're looking for quality. We're looking for quality of life. We're looking to involve all people in the value chains and really get rid of that inequality and get rid of the unemployment. So by pushing local development, we're actually solving most of our social issues. Other countries have other bigger challenges, but this for Costa Rica is pretty simple, and we're sure we can move this. Now, this is not happening alone. We're using lots of partners that are joining with us. I mean, it's amazing the collaboration that we're having, just like with the Doughnut Economics Action Lab that will be launched next week. We're going to be, together with you people all the time, because this is something we move forward in collaboration. So the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, I'm part of their global council. Savory Institute, we're becoming a global hub for savory here in Costa Rica. Capital Institute with the Regenerative Communities Network. All of these are organizations that we're actively collaborating with. Also the knowledge base. Being a university, we have to open our minds to different knowledges. And this is indigenous knowledge. So it's a degraded landscape in southern Mexico. And Manuel Castellanos, who is a Lacanón Indian on the right, he has been able to regenerate the forest, whereas a top university, I won't mention the name, has not been able to go beyond a bunch of weeds growing. And this has shown a huge potential for carbon capture. I mean, we can revert climate change just by changing the way we treat our soil. And this has been so much discussed by scientists, but we finally got a breakthrough with Ratan Lau saying that we can eliminate 157 parts per million of CO2 equivalent in the atmosphere just by changing the way we produce our food and we manage our soils. So we have now the science backing for it. So if we work on these issues, we're already getting rid of the excess of our planetary boundaries. We probably still have issues with transportation and the use of petrol, oil, and so on. But those are then issues that we can deal with at a later stage. If we solve the biggest problems, we're moving forward. So what are we doing? As I mentioned, we're working with Savory to turn all our cattle production into carbon negative. So actually a carbon capture process through cattle. We're transforming areas that were dedicated to tourism, and tourism collapsed because of COVID. It closed overnight. Our airport is still fairly closed for tourists. We're actually transforming the whole tourism sector into regenerative tourism. So it's a longer stay. I won't go into the details, but that allows us to actually start also producing agriculture in areas that were only dedicated to tourism, and the land was too expensive because of tourism to actually produce food. But all these people that were working in the tourism area, in the area of Guanacaste, over 200,000 people lost their jobs, and they don't have the money, and there is no food because the commercial chains that brought food there to hotels, they stopped working. So we're regenerating agriculture at community farms using very, very powerful methods from Cuba, from permaculture. So actually turning food production into something healthy, something fun, something that brings community together, something that gives employment, that gives jobs, and that gives entrepreneurship, added value chains, and actually solving poverty issues and the inequality issues. So doing all this together, working at the municipal level, we're supporting local governments to be more understanding of the complexity and not looking for traditional one-sided disciplinary solutions that are usually cosmetic. So by working with all the municipalities in the bioregion of Guanacaste and Nicoya, we're actually going to move them into the first actively bioregion that's going to be regenerative, and that is going to influence the rest of the country. That will make our work at the rest of the country a lot easier. We're starting with big challenges, but we can move forward very quickly. So we're using lots of tools. This is just an initial diagram of the complexity. So we do have a complex process to go through, but this is allowing us to redesign educational programs. This is allowing us to reevaluate how we do evaluation with Blue Marbles evaluation. We're actually incorporating seeds, which is a global cryptocurrency that bypasses the Horizon 1 framework of finances and taxes and so on. So we can actually move forward, and we're actually co-leading this global initiative of bouncing beyond. So instead of bouncing back to the old system, we want to bounce beyond and co-create new infrastructures for new economies, for new societies. So we're tying the local experience to the national level with Regenerate Costa Rica and to the global level with Bounce Beyond, Wellbeing Economy Alliance, Doughnut Economics Action Lab. We need to collaborate at all levels, and we need to bring in together all of these global efforts into one so we can cross that chasm and we get moving to really large-scale adoption. We have 2 years to do this. It sounds crazy, but we are in exponential change at climate change issues and biodiversity loss. So I just hope that my son, who's now 8 years old, will have a few nice words for me in 10 years, at least thanking me for having tried, and hopefully he can say, thank you for having succeeded in giving me a future. I just don't want him to ask me why I ended up using all of the leftover resources for my own life and leaving that generation basically looking into a degraded world, which won't allow us to joyfully celebrate life. So the big question is, will we act on time? And I think we can, and I'm positive, and then the Doughnut model is really going to help us. So there you are. There are my slides. I'm open to your questions, Kate. Any feedback also. This is really a challenging time, but it's the best time for opportunity. So I see it as a blessing that we got the virus.
Right. Well, that was amazing. I love your very big sweep of the rootedness of where it needs to come from and the scale of the challenge that you're embracing in Costa Rica, and then bringing it down to very practical work in municipalities, in communities, and demonstrating it in one place and then spreading it to another, but then also connecting with the Bounce Beyond initiative to say, and we're already pioneering and connecting with other countries and places that are doing this. It's fabulous. A couple of questions. Gosh. One question I have is, when you're using the Doughnut as a framework, it's just so interesting to me, and really honoring actually that you've chosen to bring it into this work that you're doing. Do you see it as a tool that's useful to talking to who? To government or to communities or to the network? Like, for whom is it a useful image to bring in? And
everybody understands it. It's so easy. It's so graphic. It's one picture. And especially when I compare it with Australia, UK, and I say, look, they've got 100% social development, but at what cost? And if you go to the social progress index, I think it was 2018, the graph I used. In terms of health and well-being, Germany and Costa Rica are at the same level. But Germany has done it at an expense to the planet that is huge. Costa Rica has done it at a little expense. So we compare countries like Chile, who is one of the highest countries in competitiveness at the economic level. It's a model for the World Bank. It's a model for the Inter-American Development Bank. It was an experiment from certain political characters around the globe that said, let's expose a society to an open market. And it failed. I mean, the society crushed before COVID last year. And the reason was people were left out of that model. So this graph just shows us how different countries have dealt with their development process and how wrong it is. And anybody can understand that. It's this simple vision, this simple graphic. And I hope we will be able to draw it as we go along. I think we need to refine the original drawing. We need to fine tune the indicators and actually get the correct 100% donut, which you can measure. And hopefully in 2-3 years, I can already show, look, we got 2,000 cattle farms capturing carbon at a huge amount. I mean, we have already measurements of the amount of, there's this, where I buy my beef, and I love beef. I'm never going to go vegan. We are adding 1 centimeter of topsoil every year to a whole cattle farm. I mean, that is more than you can achieve with electric cars running on our streets. So we need to break also the reductionist vision at the global level, who are always looking, now we're looking into bioengineering to save the planet. I mean, the precautionary principle, people don't even think about it. We cannot do bioengineering without risking killing humanity very quickly. We don't have the feedback. So it's so simple to use that a kid can understand it.
Yeah.
A politician can understand it. And these are challenging. These two extremes are challenging. But then even scientists can start understanding it. They have a little bit more problem. They have to unlearn a lot of their reductionist thinking to be able to move into it.
And what I love about the way you're using it is you created your own visualization of it, which was Costa Rica living within it. So you created this. Imagine if we have eliminated all the red. And it's that's so powerful part of making change happen, is imagining the place we could be. And what would our nation look like, and how would we be living, and what kind of activities and industries and tourism would there be there?
Another powerful thing, and I got that from your materials and also what Amsterdam is doing, is asking the questions, how can Costa Ricans live within their planetary boundaries? And how can Costa Ricans live respecting the global self?
Yes.
So these 4 questions are also very provocative for people to analyze their own life and help do that individual change. We cannot expect the UN system or our government to make the changes we need, or the corporate sector. It has to be the people.
Yes, and since you mentioned the framework from Amsterdam, these 4 questions, so I'll just say it for people who are watching who are not yet familiar with it. So we've downscaled the donut to a question. Let me pose the question for Costa Rica, okay? How can Costa Rica be a home to thriving people in a thriving place, while respecting the well-being of all people and the health of the whole planet?
That's powerful. I mean, that gets people thinking, how do I do it as a family?
Yeah.
How much carbon am I burning with my Mercedes-Benz that's out in the garage now? No different than a bicycle, because it cannot be used. So it's actually getting people to think on their reality and their impact, which is more in the heart than in the numbers. I think turning gasoline into carbon footprint was too cold for people. But asking that simple question really makes them, think inside. And I think that's fundamental. That's a spiritual side that we need to move forward with.
Yes. Brilliant. I have to say, and I know I've jokingly said this to you before, but I'm only half joking. I think, within a decade, your nation will be renamed Costa Rica. It's
Yeah.
it's waiting to happen, right? And maybe it's going to be one of the first countries that deserves to have regenerative within its very name, but it's waiting to to happen. So
We're going to do it. We're
yeah,
going to do it. And we're going
amazing.
to do it together.
We are. And thank you for your work, and thank you for sharing this, because I know that the work you're doing and your sharing of it here will inspire people in countries and towns and cities and villages to say, wow, let's start doing that here. Let's start that approach. So I want you to end with a piece of advice. Somebody watches this and says, I'm so inspired by what they're doing in Costa Rica. Your piece of advice is?
Don't let yourself down by people saying it's impossible. Everything is possible. And when I talk with kids that don't have a hope in the future, they know the planet is dying. They know we have to act now. And they don't care about money. They know you cannot eat money. So these kids are looking into an empty space forward. And I say, come on, let's build hope together. Nature is still there. It's still willing to help us, but we need to act. So let's engage in building this future. And it can be done no matter how many people are saying it cannot be done. When I founded the university 26 years ago, people asked me, what are you doing founding a university? And I said, I'm going to change the world. Well, here I am. We are changing the world. It is possible for one person to bring other groups together. We cannot do it alone. But right now, all this possibility of collaborating, I can just imagine getting all the kids from 15 to 30 years together around the planet, no matter what language. They can do their communication even without the current languages. And turning everything upside down, getting girls, young women into politics, getting all the old gray-haired and orange-haired people out of government, getting this feminine principle of taking care. It's just so possible, so close. And that change can happen quickly. We won't change the system in the horizon one. And let's not try to do it. But let's build this better system. That can be done quickly.
Can't say more than that. Thank you so much. I know this is just going to have ripples and ripples and ripples of inspiration. Thanks, Ed. See you in the Action Lab.
Let's do it. Yes.